All right, everybody, this is Rob here from Rob's School of Music, and we have a treat today. This is probably one of the coolest people we've gotten to talk to so far. Her story is incredible. The amazing Laura Escudé. Hello, how are you?
Hi, Rob. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure entirely. So, like, as I was, people who watched this before would, it's a lot of guitar players, drummers, singers, but coming from the classical background and the whole Ableton world and production, um, it's just so super cool. So I guess my first question for you is, how'd you get started?
I was a classical violinist. I just was doing the orchestra thing and, playing classically for a really long time. I discovered the violin when I was 6 at a church, and I saw a girl playing it, and I said, I want to do that.
Cool.
And I just kind of fell in love with the instrument. So just played classically for a really long time. And then when I got into high school, I got accepted to the Interlochen summer camp in Michigan. So it's for those of you that don't know, it's a really big music school, music camp. They have a summer program. And so I was there for about 2 months and just like completely immersed in, classical music. And while I was there, there was a radio station, and I became friends with the guy who was the DJ on the radio station, and he was playing like hip hop music and like electronic music and all different kinds of stuff. And that was really like my first, like exposure to other music. I mean, I'd heard pop music, and of course classical was my life, but I hadn't really heard any other music. And styles of music. So I really just got super into like, Dave Matthews Band. He had this amazing violinist, Boyd Tinsley. And I was like, oh my gosh, that guy's shredding. Like, I want to learn how to shred. But I had no idea how to do it. I had no idea like how to start to improvise or, play violin that just wasn't off of a sheet of paper as had grown up doing. So it was really, kind of an interesting segue for me into this complete other world.
Wow, that's actually, because we do violin, that's one of the instruments we have here. And our teacher, one of his main focuses is to get it outside of that strict classical realm. He's teaching uh,
Yeah.
improv and video game scores and stuff like that. That's so outside of what the box, I guess, used to be. How does that lead into Ableton and all that?
I went away to school, and my freshman year I was at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, and still doing the classical music thing. I went home for the summer. My folks, my dad's in the Navy, so moved around a lot. They moved back down to Florida. Went home for the summer and met all these like beach kids on the beach in Florida, and just fell in love with Florida and the lifestyle there. And so I decided to transfer to Florida State and go to the music school there, which is actually a really good music school. A lot of diversity, very different from Vanderbilt, which is also a good school, just, very different. So it was there that my best friend's boyfriend was a DJ, and they started inviting me to these like, underground club nights, these rave nights, electronic music nights, whatever you want to call it. And, at first I was like, no, I don't know. That's not really my thing. Like, I don't know what electronic music is. I don't know. This isn't my scene. And then one night I said, I'll just come out with you. Let's just do it. So I went out, and I just discovered this whole other side of music, this community, this inclusivity, just people completely being themselves, dancing like crazy, wearing crazy stuff. And it was there that I just like fell in love with electronic music. And so from there, I started playing violin with DJs. And I remember like the first genre that I tried to play over was drum and bass, and which is really, really fast. And it was kind of, didn't sound very good. I can tell you that. But I persisted, and I was like, okay, I'm still going to keep trying. And, it was really me just like trying to improvise, but really not having the tools yet, so I was just really just getting my feet. And, from there, I started playing violin over production. So I was working with a few producers, and I started booking nights at this club that I was working at, and I started booking electronic musicians to come in, and I booked this band called Smoke, and I didn't really know anything about them. I just knew that they were like a local funk band. So they came in to play, and turns out it was George Clinton's son was in the band.
Wow.
And turns out that George Clinton actually lives in Tallahassee, where Florida State is. He's from there, which I didn't know. And so all of a sudden, my other friend is so funny. It's like my friend's boyfriends got me into this stuff, but my other friend's boyfriend, started dating the producer in that group. So all of a sudden, I'm in the room with George Clinton and all these other crazy producers. And, at first I was just sort of hanging out on the sidelines. And then, as I started to get more comfortable, I started saying to them like, hey, like, what about trying this?
Frozen. Let's see what happens here. Sometimes that happens, guys. It's no big deal. We'll get it right back on. That's never happened on StreamYard before.
This, or try this sound, or try this melody, or whatever. And I really didn't. Oh,
There
we're
you are.
back.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Okay,
timed
cool.
out there. That was weird. Yeah. Sorry.
Anyway, no, it's all good. I'm glad we came back, because sometimes my internet just drops for no reason. I have to restart my computer, and. So anyway, yeah. So I was in the room with them, and I just started making all these suggestions. Like, hey, why don't you try this? Da, da, da. And then I was like, well, I just really want to do it myself, because I had these ideas, these sounds in my head, and these ideas, and I just, explaining them to someone else is just so hard, right?
Right.
So I started to learn how to use the software that they were using, and it was called Acid Pro at the time, and so started using Acid Pro. I started taking like a really basic class in school. We didn't have much of a music technology program, but it was Cakewalk Pro Audio 9, which was like super long time ago, like floppy disk. I'm showing how old I am. But yeah, so I started, just like making music and trying to play violin and record violin using the software. And that's kind of how I got started.
That's so cool. And honestly, like, going back to the beginning or the early, because everyone now, you get a computer and it comes with GarageBand, or you can get, FL Studio. Like, everything is so accessible. But you take it back, 10 years ago, a little bit more, like, it was special to have these tools. And it took an education and a financial investment. And it was a big deal. So I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. And we didn't have any YouTube, or
Right.
we didn't have the resources that we have now to learn things. So I was trying to learn, and it was really it was a challenge for me. It sounded terrible. I was like, how do I make this sound? Like, I don't even know. I remember like I got my first credit card, and I bought like some sort of MIDI controller with it. It was just like the most expensive thing that I'd ever bought. And it was a Yamaha motif. That's what it
Nice.
was. Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, yeah. So I got the motif, and then I didn't understand like the difference between audio and MIDI, and so I bought this really expensive thing, and then I ended up using like Reason for all the MIDI stuff, and using the keyboard to play Reason, the software. So anyway, it was an exciting time though, because it was just like, I spent all my nights and weekends. I had a day job at the time when I graduated from college, but I was just spending all my time just trying to learn how to use the software and get better at it.
I think that's very fascinating. For me personally, I'm a guitar player is my main instrument. I went to school for music and stuff, but only in the last, I'd say 5 years or so, have I been like blown away with like the technical side. Like, I always had studios and stuff, but now like I purchased Ableton. I got the Push 2. I'm messing around. There's a big analog thing back there that you can't see, but like it's so cool to be able to take a piece of audio and manipulate it and chop it up and stretch it out. And coming from a guitar background, it's not, you can't really do that in the same way. So I think it's very cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's just so much that you can do, especially now. I mean, there's the tools are so vast and getting less expensive, so it's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, forgive my lack of knowledge, but prior to first, coming into my bubble and be like, holy crap, this woman's incredible. I didn't even know a playback engineer was a gig.
Right. I know.
And
Yeah.
that's, so how does that work? Is there a session running live while a concert's happening? Like how much is pre-programmed? How much is improvised?
I mean, it really depends on the artist and, where they're at in their career and what they're doing. So just to give a little bit of background, I moved to LA and I ended up working at this company called M Audio and then started working at Ableton and, became certified in Ableton and started, working with artists on their live shows. In 2009, I got a call from Cirque du Soleil and they wanted me to move to Vegas and do their playback for their show. And I really didn't know what that meant at the time. And I was just like, sure, sign me up. That sounds amazing. So I didn't really know it was a thing either. And after that, I just started getting these calls to, do tours and ended up touring with Kanye for 7 years and, doing American Idol and like all these shows. But I really just kind of fell into it. Like I didn't really know it was a job. And it was because I was good at Ableton and knew the software. But yeah, so basically playback engineering is when you have backing tracks that are playing live on stage. So most bands now have backing tracks or at least click tracks when you see them perform live, so that everyone can keep in time. Drummers usually are listening to the click, but most times when you get to a certain level, you want all the band to be on click. It's really like when an artist moves beyond the DJ atmosphere, right? So most artists or bands, they'll at a certain point, they'll get to this certain point and they're like, okay, I want to do more. Like, I want to break out my background vocals. Like, I want, the synths, I want the bass to be mixed separately. I want whoever's mixing my monitors or in-ears to have more control. I want whoever's mixing front of house to have more control. I want to change things night after night and like do the songs differently or make different edits. So basically that's what playback engineering is. It's we come in and we facilitate all of this stuff for the artist or the musical director on stage. And, at a higher level, it also works with the lighting and video. So if you go to like a big Taylor Swift show and, the chorus comes in to, her song, the video and the lighting is going to be the same every single time. And that's because of something called time code that's being played from Ableton. So the music is all being played, and then there's time code being played alongside it. And that is being sent to front of house, and the lighting and video folks will grab that, and then they've programmed to it. And so then it'll just fire off all the right things at the right time. So it kind of, encompasses quite a bit from just, the backing tracks to the clicks and cues and all that kind of stuff that, you don't want the audience to hear, right, but the band needs to hear. Count-ins, like chorus 2, 3. I mean, it depends on the artist and it depends on the band. Some people, know everything frontwards and backwards. And then some people need reminders, they might be drinking a little too much beer and they need a little reminder to drop out and not play. So sometimes we put those kinds of cues in their in-ears. So a lot of times, we'll also do things like auto tune for artists or, do pitch shifting on their vocals or distortion or delays or, just sort of manipulate their vocals at the same time. So it really can encompass, quite a variety. Also like drum sounds, keyboard sounds. If there's a MIDI controller on stage, we'll be responsible for helping to program that and change the right patches at the right time. So, wow. Yeah, that's what it is.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It really is. I mean, people sleep on the job and they're just like, I mean, not really sleep on the, but they sleep on the position, saying like, oh, well, that's just, it seems easy, right? But it's actually like one of the most important positions out there because, the lighting is a little messed up, or like the video is a little messed up. It's okay if a guitarist plays a wrong note, it's not awesome, but it's okay. But if the music stops or the music messes up or just doesn't sound right, then it's kind of a showstopper.
Sure.
So yeah, yeah.
When you're working with someone like Kanye, who's so prolific and an artist through and through in terms of what the art and the work he seems to be putting out there, like is it collaborative in terms of I'm gonna just crank up the blend on the reverb or the delay here or
Yeah, totally. It's so funny. Like, when I toured with him with his vocals, like most of the time I would be improvising. So I would try different things and then he would, most of the time like them. Of course, sometimes there were things that he didn't like and that's okay. But like, most of the time I was basically just like free to manipulate his voice in the moment. I mean, of course, the main thing is you got to get the auto tune in the right key or else that's not good. But other than that, like I would add different vocal effects or like distortion or like delays or something like that. And sometimes like if I turned on a certain delay, like, and he would hear it, he would realize it was on, and then he would like kind of go into a more improvisational moment where he would like let it reverberate out. And I kind of, after working with him for so long, I kind of like knew what those moments were going to be, or like I would suggest to him almost, even though we weren't communicating, while during the performance, I would sort of suggest to him like, hey, I can add this for you right now if you want to like go off and do something crazy. So that's kind of like what that was about, and as far as vocal effects. And then as far as the music, I mean, yeah, just like it differed, so I did some string arrangements for the tours, and also played violin on the Watch the Throne album with Jay-Z, and did that tour as well. And
so cool.
yeah, so I got a chance to do some violin stuff, and then just day to day it was like making different mixes, remixes of songs, making suggestions. Sometimes they had a really clear idea. Okay, like I want this song to go into this song exactly like this. And, I want to cut this part out, or I want to extend this, or I want to take the vocals out of this part or whatever. And then other times, I would have suggestions. So I would, execute that stuff. And then other times I would have suggestions like, we were in New York at Madison Square Garden, and I knew that we needed like an epic, like New York sort of intro for that show. And so I came up with a bunch of like different options for them to listen to. And they were like, listen to them. And it's like, okay, I like this option, but can you do this a little differently, or, whatever. So it was definitely like super collaborative. It's not like that with all artists. Some artists that are just starting out they just want it to sound like the record, and just kind of like take my lead vocals out and that's it. But when you get a chance to work with someone like Kanye or, really creative artists, it's super fun because they just have all kinds of crazy ideas, and, it's up to us to kind of make it happen.
I think that's such a cool gig. I mean, my favorite bands are the ones that it's different every time. If you
Yeah.
follow a certain band every night, it's a different set list. Songs, there may be a stripped down version. Something is swapping out. And unfortunately, I think this stigma or the connotation is in a lot of more commercial pop music. It's kind of the way it is every time. But to hear that there's so much artistic, effort put into making things change and make it organic, I think that's really incredible.
Yeah, it makes it super fun. And we've just the teams, like especially at that level, the teams are amazing, and the people around, and it's like it's not just one person coming up with ideas. It could be like 10 people, which can be overwhelming because in my position I have to be like, okay, I need all of y'all to hold on. I'll talk to you now. Like you really have to delegate because people are like, I got an idea. And it's just like trying to figure out, okay, well, what idea are we going with? Because, sometimes you'll just be in the moment, everyone's being creative. And then it's like, actually, it sounded better like 2 hours ago kind of thing. So you got to like be, structured around like saving things differently. And so, yeah, it's pretty fun.
Cool. Well, I mean, I think, one of the things that we try and put out to our students here at the school is being a musician isn't always, if you're not Taylor Swift, it doesn't mean that you've failed. There are so many tiers and steps along the way to survive as a musician and wear lots of different hats. Sometimes you're behind the scenes, sometimes you're, and out on the stage. Sometimes it's all these different angles you can do.
Yeah.
So something like this, I think, is such a cool, different way of doing it. And then you do your own stuff as well. So when you're the artist, what's that process like?
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I play violin. I also produce electronic music. So I call myself a future classical artist. So it's like
I
classical
love that.
music mixed with futuristic, like weird bass sounds and synth sounds and stuff. You can see I got all these synths in the background. So I'm a big
We're
synth
going to talk
fan.
about those too. Don't worry.
Yeah, it's cool, cool, cool. Yeah. And, I just really like I used to be in bands and that was great. And, at a certain point I was like, I just want to kind of have my own solo project and do my own thing and, still collaborate with people, but just as far as performing, decide to kind of go off on my own and develop this one woman show where I'm, looping violin and synths and just creating everything on the fly basically. And I've got some pre-made stuff, but I'm trying to do more and more just like everything's, improv and in the moment. So it's different every time. And so it's cool. I use a lot of different kinds of effects and controllers and, pedals. I don't maybe have as many as you do in the background there, but
Oh, yeah, that's
I
a
got
disease.
I got some. I use a couple of Eventide H9s. I got one for my vocals and one for my violin and so yeah, it's fun. I mean, total gearhead, got a lot of stuff and just like try to take as much of it as possible. And one of the great things about this year, I mean, not a lot of great things, but one of the great things is like performing and live streaming, I get to have all my gear with me, which is great. Because when traveling before, I mean, I was playing all these festivals, and you gotta have it all in a 50-pound,
Right.
Pelican
Yep.
case,
Yep.
and it's really hard to part with certain pieces of gear because you're just like, I just want this with me, but you really just cannot bring it. And also like your stands and everything like that, like. You roll up to a club or a venue, they just have like the regular, like table, and you're like, but at home I've got these beautiful stands that. So, but yeah, it's super fun. I just love like experimenting live and, performing and just like making weird sounds basically.
It speaks to my heart. As you can tell with this obnoxious pedal collection, Weird Sounds is the way to go.
Yeah.
But I just think that's cool to be able to find something musical and things that aren't. In my touring years, I was frequently in bands that didn't have a keyboard player. So it fell on me as a guitar player to kind of cover a lot of that ground.
Yeah.
And in my more recent time, we've had a keyboard player, and I've found myself stepping on his toes because it's like,
Right.
no, you don't do that. I do that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I got to be very, aware in those kinds of situations and just make sure that, everyone's cool. And
Yeah.
totally. Yeah.
So I want to get into you teach. You teach. So
I
you've
do.
taken this amazing knowledge, and you were the first certified Ableton trainer, which I think is incredible. I don't
Thank
have
you.
with me, but I
Thank you.
have. There's this like gray Ableton book. It was like 80
Oh,
bucks on
yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have that up on my shelf
And
there. Yeah.
I looked through that. Like, I'm only recently into that. I was a Logic and Pro Tools guy forever, but I still would look into it just for inspiration and kind of.
Yeah.
I'm so fascinated by different people's, creative flow and the workflow, and how do you not box yourself into a corner.
Yeah.
So you have taken this knowledge and started your own academy in which to do that. So
Yeah.
how did that start out, and what are the I see now there's different classes you have and more of an a la carte kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So, I became certified and, around that time, like 2008, I was doing a lot of like master classes on my own. So, we called them like Ableton Live master classes in LA, and, would bring all these people in and whatnot, have like guests and everything. And, once I started touring, I kind of put all of the teaching aside for a while, just because I was, so I was gone, I was away, and 2016 or so, I actually had like a massive health breakdown just because I'd been, going so hard and I was touring, and I think I did like, 3 different shows back to back in different cities with
Wow.
different artists, and I just kind of, my body was just like, no, no. So, while I was recovering from that, I kind of just realized, I want to change my lifestyle a bit. And, I'd been like going pretty hard for many years. I was touring the world. I was, working with Kanye when he wasn't working, touring. I was working with all these other different artists. It was constantly just like away, not at home. And it was fulfilling for a while. And then I was like, it's been a while since like I've dated anyone or like had a normal sort of lifestyle. And so I decided to try to, spend more time at home. And in 2016, it was actually Kanye's St. Pablo tour. And so, I went out for like a month or so and got it started. And then I trained someone from my team and my company, Electronic Creatives. I trained a bunch of people to also do playback stuff. And so trained someone from my team to take over. And I just wanted to kind of explore what it was like to work on my own projects more and focus on some education stuff. And so I created my first Transmute retreat in 2017, and this was in Florida. And so my big vision was to bring a bunch of music nerds together to perform and talk about Ableton, and also do things like yoga and meditation and kind of some of these self-care things that I'd gotten really involved in while I was healing. And I didn't know where it was going to go, but I just thought, I just want to bring together all these things that I love in one place. And so we did a week at this beautiful art center there. And I got back in 2018, and I just thought, how can I reach more people? Like, how can I, do something that's not necessarily like live in person? Because I'd been doing a lot of like live in person trainings and whatnot. And so I had the idea to start the Transmute Accelerator. And so transmute, for those of you that don't know, it's a word that means morphing from one phase to another. So it's like this evolution, and just really like was symbolic for me because I was really trying to transform my life and my lifestyle at that time. And so I thought, I really latched onto the word, and I was like, okay, this is something that really speaks to me. So I just started using that for, like everything during that time. I had like released a song and an album, and then had this program. And so the program, the first iterations were a 2-month program online for artists to come and learn how to use Ableton Live and harness the power of Ableton and other pieces of technology to create amazing live performances. And after working with Kanye and all these different artists over the years, I just really I saw an opening. I saw something for like independent artists. I saw that independent artists could use this technology too, and especially if they couldn't afford a person like me on their tour, right? Unless you're, at that level where you have all this money to have someone there, you kind of have to do it yourself. And so I just got really inspired to show independent artists how to do, the work that I was doing for themselves. And so the Transmute Accelerator was born, and we started the first iteration in March of 2019, last year, and we've had 4 different classes of it. So it's a 2-month program. And just amazing. We've had artists from all over the world join us and super level up their shows. I mean, just like game changing, leveling up. And when the pandemic hit this year, were planning on doing the 3rd iteration of it. And it suddenly became about live streaming. It was about Ableton and live streaming. How do we live stream Ableton,
Right.
online? And I'd been doing quite a bit of live streaming before that. So it just kind of made it was natural to kind of integrate all of this information into the program. And so, so we had two versions of it this year. And kind of along the way, I started realizing, hey, I've got all this content that we've created for the accelerator. We should just, start making more one-off courses so that people who can't afford to join the entire thing, they can still get into our, community and into our world. So we just launched the Transmute Academy, which is kind of the hub for all of the things educationally that I do. And we've got a couple of free courses, some paid courses in there, and then the option to join either the accelerator or the Transmute Society. And the society is biweekly master classes, and we're relaunching that in January. So that's kind of for anyone, if anyone wants to come and hang out with us and learn. We've got amazing guests that come through the program. So yeah, that's the whole
I,
thing.
I love it. I think the greatest thing you can do with knowledge is share it with other people. That's a
Yeah,
big part of the philosophy here at the school. Myself and the other musicians and teachers that I employ. Our whole concept and our mission statement is to pay it forward, give it to the next generation.
absolutely. Yeah.
And your skill set is so specialized to have access to that. I think is just it's a game changer. It really is.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly agree. I just love education, and I always learn stuff too. Like, I mean, I'm continually learning stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's like never ending. So it's also like somewhat selfish because I'm like, I have all these amazing guests come in and teach these master classes, and I'm like taking notes. Like
Right.
what are they doing? Because everyone does it differently. There's always something to learn. So it's super exciting. Yeah.
Definitely. I drive my girlfriend crazy because I say I'm passionate about passion. And
Yeah.
when I'm talking to someone who's into something, I mean, throughout all these interviews, I've done, probably 35 at this point. And
That's
every
cool.
person, like, it's for the students, obviously, but for me too, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to unpack that later. That was incredible. It's
Yeah.
we're all in this together. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's what we really invite into our community. I say, high vibe artists. That's kind of like my, our tagline. It's like people who want to share. They want to help
right.
one another. They're not like, oh, these are my secrets and I'm not going
Yeah.
to ever tell. I mean, obviously, we all have to make money. We all have to like support ourselves. And so that, is premium stuff that we put out there, but we do a lot of stuff that's just free and open to the public just because, you know, people like I just remember when I was getting started, I didn't have the funds, I didn't have the resources to kind of invest in myself. And it was just those, certain things that helped get me started, certain people that helped me out or whatever. And so if I can be that for someone, that's just, the greatest part of it. It definitely lends itself to me living in my joy, which is one of my main things that I like to focus on and just makes me happy. So yeah,
I love it. I
nice.
love the spiritually centered vibe of all of this as well. The
Thank you.
self care, like I'm vegan, like I am
Nice.
doing the best I can to be the best I can be. And
Yeah,
I think having that, you know, centered perspective is very important.
absolutely. I mean, I don't know where I'd be without it, to be honest. I would still be running myself into the ground and kind of, overcommitting and doing too much. And,
Sure.
I mean, you can, I mean, it's my hope to just show people that you don't have to burn out before you find all this stuff. And I think much more now, it's like, it's more prevalent. People are like, oh, self care, they kind of know what it's about. And, but other people have had to learn the hard way, myself included. Like we just did too much and pushed ourselves too far, and
Yep.
then it's just hard to kind of come back from that in some cases.
I think it's because as musicians and as trying to be professional musicians, it's terrifying to say no to anything. Take every
Totally.
opportunity, and
Yeah.
maybe I'll sleep 2 days from now. And it catches up. It definitely
It
does.
does. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely.
Do you have any tips? So a lot of our students are I don't say a lot. I don't know. Honestly, I'm doing the math in my probably over 50% of our students are female. Um,
Ooh,
right? Isn't that so cool? Yep,
hey.
I love it. I work with a couple of girls personally. I teach them the guitar, like
Oh, I love that.
middle school, early high school, and they shred. Oh my God, do they shred? But
I love it.
one of the questions I always try to ask whenever I get to talk to a female professional is, do you have any tips
Yeah.
for, a young woman coming up through this business? We've all heard the crappy side of it and the terrible things that they could come
Yeah.
across. Do you have any tips for them to stay strong and focused?
I would say just keep practicing. And, the climate is changing and it's changed so much since I first got in. I mean, I didn't have any role models when I first started. I didn't know any other women that were doing what I did. And that was hard. That was really hard for me. But now, I mean, I just think there's so many more role models out there. So I just say, like, find a mentor, find a role model to, that you can look up to, that you can follow, that you can maybe ask questions or, attend some of their meetings or events or whatever they're doing. Because I really think, like, having the role models really just helps to solidify, that confidence in yourself and in what you're doing. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the things. And just to keep going. I mean, like you're saying that these girls are shredding. Like, I see that all the time now, too. I'm like, wow, like, just keep practicing, keep going. Like, don't, compare yourself to other people. Like, just surround yourself with good, supportive people, and you'll get there. And just like the thought work that I do, and like my mental state, like that just really helps me so much. Because, like, whenever I hear like my inner voice with these like words and things that are kind of tearing me down, I just like reframe it, and it's like, it's so important for women to do that, especially because we've been programmed, a lot of us from an early age, like, oh, you can't do this or you shouldn't do this. I mean, I
It's
was told that
terrible.
so much when I was first starting out. Like, these, people would tell me, guys would tell me, like, oh, the learning curve's too hard. You're never going to get it. Like, oh, I guess they hired a woman because, they wanted a woman here in the
Right. It's
office,
the
or,
worst.
just like all these kinds of things that people would say. And, luckily now, like, the climate has changed so much where it's like, if people say that, just like, I think people like check themselves a bit more now, thankfully. But yeah, it's just important to, like, especially, if you do have to field things like that, people do say things like that to you. Just like stand your ground and just know, like, hey, you're awesome. You're doing the best that you can. It doesn't matter if, these people say that you're not or whatever. Like, it just matters what you think about yourself, and just to keep going.
Awesome. I love that. I
Yeah.
love that. And I will make sure everybody hears that, because that's just,
Yeah.
to hear that from someone who's had such a prolific career and then taken and done so many other wonderful things with it, I think that's really empowering. So that's really cool.
Thanks.
Let's go to the music theory side of things. So
Okay.
I know it's such a,
Yeah.
a strange pivot there, but
Right.
um, you know, a lot of our students push back on that. They're turned off to it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
What's your take on that? Is it a black and white? You gotta have it, or does it depend on the situation, or does that come into your process in any way? I mean, from the classical,
Yeah.
I guess.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I was, classically trained, so I did all the music theory in college, and, did composition and writing and everything. And, I think it's really important, to be honest. I really do. I mean, look, if you're going to be like a side person, and you're just like playing in a band, and you're playing stuff that's like written out for you, or like someone's telling you, hey, this is what you're playing, then cool. Like, maybe you don't need to know it as well. But if you're planning on being in a creative situation, with a band or other artists, I mean, to be able to like come up with an idea like on the spot like that, I think is great. And so knowing music theory, just, it really helps. Especially if you want to learn how to produce and make your own tracks. Like, something that I'm getting better at is, like, chords on the piano, right? Because I play the violin, and mostly do sort of like melodic kinds of stuff with the violin, right? and lead kind of things. And so forever, my weak point has been the chords. Even though, I learned music theory and I learned about chords back then, I didn't really practice it.
Right.
And now I'm like, okay, right. This is makes or breaks the song is the chord structures, and you got to know that stuff. So yeah, I guess that would just, I definitely really believe in music theory, and if you get the chance to practice it, for sure I would say do it. It's tedious, but it pays off.
It's worth it. I always try, and for me, I was a guitar player from age 13 onward. I didn't
Yeah.
learn a thing about theory till college, and it punched me right in the face, and I was like, I guess I suck. And then after
Yeah.
school, it wasn't quite as prevalent in my life, but then in the last half decade, it's been my life. So I
Yeah.
recognize that, and I always try and say to my younger students, like, guys, your brain is a sponge. You're ready to learn it, just do the work, because if you want to be a musician in any capacity at a professional level, this stuff can only help you.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Like I said, it's tedious and it's not necessarily fun, but once you get it down, you could make real magic happen with your music. So yeah.
Cool. So
Yeah.
let's talk about some of those cool toys behind you there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
you're on a desert island. What would you bring with you?
Oh, probably oh gosh, this is so hard, but
I
like
know it's terrible.
probably my subsequent 37, the Moog synth that's up there. I don't know. It sounds so fat and thick, and just like the bass. I love bass, so yeah, the bass is amazing on it. And it's not like the most challenging synth of all time that I've ever played. I've got other ones that are more challenging, but like I just love the way it sounds and feels, and Moog is just like the best. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Definitely a justifiable answer. When you're doing stuff within Ableton, are you doing everything in the box? Are you bringing sounds, like, would you plug, what's that process?
Yeah, so some stuff is in the box. I do a lot of violin recording and then, synth recording as well. So yeah, it's kind of half and half, I would say. I generally for drum stuff use samples that are MIDI. I do have some VSTs and things that I use. I try to use VSTs that sound warm, that sound analog. But yeah, it's kind of a blend of analog and digital stuff.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Is the for violin recording, is it an acoustic violin with a pickup? Is it an electric violin? How does that work? Forgive
Yeah.
my
So
ignorance.
it's okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I have a couple of different violins. I've got just an acoustic one, which is a 4 string, which is kind of like, my super expensive one that I've had since college and, sounds great. I've got a 5 string violin, which is an acoustic electric. So it can be either or. Sounds great acoustic, sounds great electric as well. So it's got a jack on it. And, I'll generally use that one most of the time, especially when I'm doing like scratch violins and things, because I could just kind of plug it in and like jam along with whatever I'm doing without headphones and, just like come up with some, ideas or whatever. And that one's a 5 string, so it sounds like has a low viola C string, so it sounds like a viola
Wow.
as well. Yeah.
I didn't even know that was a thing, a 5 string violin.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of 5 strings around there. And then I've got an electric violin, which is just, regular electric violin. And I use that to actually play synthesizer. So I've got this software that converts audio to MIDI in real time. And so I can use the violin to play the synthesizers. So I do that. And then I've got another violin that's also acoustic electric. It's a 5 string, and it's got octave down strings. So it sounds like a cello.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. So I got a couple of different different axes in my arsenal.
Yeah, that's see that right there. That blows my mind too. Because again, as a guitar player, I'm sitting in a room with 25 guitars, but
Right.
violin can do the same exact thing. So
Yeah. I don't have 25, but I got 4. So
it's okay. Um, there's still time.
yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah.
For
I
the
mean, I
one,
actually worked with Steve Vai last year, and I went over to his house. That dude's got some.
yes. Oh my gosh, the Harmony Hut with just everything everywhere. It's insane. It's one of my
He's
favorites.
awesome. I actually was teaching him how to use Ableton and how to loop, and it was really cool. He was super into it. Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. He's
Uh,
great.
for the one that converts the audio to MIDI, there's no
Yeah.
latency. It's just super smooth.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's pretty smooth. There's always a little bit of latency, but I actually run it off of a separate laptop, so it's just like dedicated for the
Smart.
violin, basically. Yeah. So I mean, if I had it running into my performance laptop, the latency would be considerably more. So kind of just like break that out and do its own thing.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So if someone was just coming complete zero, wanting to get into production, I know there's the light version of Ableton out there, so it's
Yeah.
something someone can get into. I think from my circle, the thing that frightens people when they're looking at Ableton is when you look at Logic or Pro Tools or all the others, they're left to right. And the way
Linear. Yeah.
yes, and I know Ableton has a screen that looks that way, but
Yeah.
it's sort of a different animal. So how do you wrap your head around that?
Yeah, so when I first started using Ableton, I also was just like really just didn't know what to do with the session view, as they call it. And yeah, once I started learning, like wrapping my head around it, it really made sense. So it looks scary at first, but it's actually the most amazing thing for creating. And I just use it like a sketch pad for ideas. You just drop loops in there, you record a loop, and every song that I starts with that view now. And then you can just record yourself jamming on these loops, and it records over to the linear view called the arrangement view. And then from there you can kind of like refine your arrangement. So it's almost like you're jamming and you're creating these loops and these sounds, and it speeds up the process for me, rather than it's like you're having more fun in the moment doing it, rather than when you're creating a linear arrangement from scratch. You're kind of, already trying to figure out the arrangement, and it, kind of slows things down. But when you're just like, okay, I'm vibing on a loop, this is what it is. Like, let me throw a drum break on it or do whatever. It's just a little bit, I don't know, I think more fun.
Yeah, I mean the live element, the creative element of it, I think from my handful of months messing with it, seems to be very inspiring.
Yeah.
But it's still for me personally in my own little world that the learning curve is intimidating. I may jump over to your academy after this and get
You
some training.
should. Yeah, you should. Yeah, we have fun over there for sure.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to do my last bit here. It's a series of rapid fire questions,
Okay.
one thing or the other. Unfortunately, most of them are guitar related, so really it's
Okay.
just going to be I'll just take a handful about effects, which isn't
Sure.
going to be super exciting, but it's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
All right, so delay or reverb?
Delay.
Okay. Fuzz or overdrive?
Ooh, fuzz.
All right, I like that. Dirty, gritty, cool. Phaser or chorus?
Chorus.
Okay, and then the last couple are just like classic rock band ones. So I don't
Okay.
if you have an opinion on that. Beatles or Rolling Stones?
Ooh, that's hard. Probably Stones.
Okay, all right. In the Beatles world, would it be John or Paul?
Definitely Paul, and I've worked with Paul. He's awesome.
Oh my
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
the flex of all flexes. Hello. Oh, what was that? What was that about? Forget my silly questions.
Yeah. He and Kanye had a song with
Oh
Rihanna,
yeah.
4 or 5 seconds a few years back, and so he was at the Grammys, and he was at the Grammy like rehearsals, and I remember he just like came over to me and was like, "Hey, I'm Paul. Like, what are you doing over here?" And then he realized who I was, and he was like, "Oh my gosh! Like, I heard your vocal effects during the Watch the Throne tour, and I really enjoyed it, and stuff." He was a really nice guy. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, I got to tell you, I have gotten to speak to some really incredible people, but no one worked with the Beatles. So you are now my number one favorite interview of all time.
Oh, thank you. I'm assuming that your answer would be the Beatles over the Stones then.
Uh, I don't have. So these questions are designed to help people make opinions for myself because I like both. The next question would have been Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin, and I like both too. So
Ah, it's so hard.
yeah,
Yeah. I think I would have to say Pink Floyd,
yeah.
but I don't know.
All right. So then, if it's Pink Floyd, is it Dark Side or The Wall?
Ooh, probably Dark Side.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. See, there's no wrong answers to these questions.
Yeah,
That's how
I mean, it's all good. It's all
right.
good.
Right. I see one question. I guess we'll close out with a question from the chat here. I say, who's your favorite electronic artist?
Ooh, that's a good one. Probably Moderat or Moderat.
I don't even know who
Yeah,
that is.
Moderat. Yeah,
What's that?
great artist. German artist. Actually, well, it's a collection of artists. It's Apparat and Mode Selector together, and they won a Grammy this past year, I believe. Yeah, and yeah, just like their live show is incredible, their music's incredible. Definitely check them out on the Spotify. I also have a new single out that just came out yesterday.
Oh, do tell.
So, yeah, it's called Unlimited Expansiveness, and it's my future classical sound. And I also released a sample pack for it. So, if you go to my Bandcamp, it's just my name at Bandcamp. And yeah, the sample pack's got like, I don't know, like 70 or 80 different like violin loops and different
Cool.
things you can play around with. So,
That's awesome.
yeah,
I'll put links to all that stuff when I repost this for the podcast, and then for the YouTube, I'll stick them back at the bottom too, so everyone can find all your stuff and everything that you have going on.
cool. Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thank you
Thanks.
so much for your time. This was so
Yes.
inspiring and awesome.
Thank you.
Stay safe out there.
Definitely.
I don't know if you're a NAMM show goer, but I usually am. So
Usually.
when there is one,
Yeah.
maybe
Usually, yeah.
we'll cross paths out there. But
For sure.
until then,
Yeah.
happy holidays.
Thanks. You too. Thanks for having me on. Love what you do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Keep
Thank you.
rocking.
Awesome. All right.